You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 349, The Mandalorian, Season 2, The Passenger, if I got the order right there. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. We are going to break down the most recent episode of The Mandalorian from Season 2. And to help me do that is none other than Mr. Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Doing excellent. How about yourself?
I am feeling a little bit naked tonight. I cannot find my watch, and I am freaking out. So I normally have it, and it's just one of those things where I've got my routine, and if it's thrown off, then no promises. But yeah, doing okay otherwise.
Yeah. So whoever's listening in and tuning in, get ready for a wild one. Albert's going to be off the rails.
I'm going to be off the rails. It's already kind of started that way. All right, I'm going to keep looking for my watch as we go on here. But before we get started, we've got a couple things we want to talk about. And first off, I wanted to mention our buddy Joe. You guys know him. He's been on. He's never been on the Cantina Cast. He's been on.
He was on our celebration bonus episodes.
That's right.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, he was on that. He's been on The Basement a few times. He is the host along with Josh on the Film Appraisers. He has just launched a new podcast. I think they're only on their third episode at this point.
Yep.
Called the Barrel House podcast, and it's him and his journey through this wonderful world of whiskey. Now, I am not an expert on whiskey, and I'm not advocating drinking by any means, but I am advocating Joe because he has put his whole soul into the show and has done an outstanding job. He's already picked up some reviews I thought was amazing to see the people that are already providing feedback. But if whiskey is your thing, it is just another show that we've got on the Earglue Media Network that is something different. It's not real nerdy kind of stuff, although he does get into some of that stuff. But I know you've had a chance to listen to it. I know you're a whiskey fan as well. So what do you think?
No, it's fantastic. He takes you through a little bit of the history of the whiskey that he's trying out, some of his personal experience with it and what he enjoys about it. So it's a very personal podcast, and he did a fantastic job. It sounds great too. So if you're an audiophile, you'll enjoy the sweet tones of Joe's voice. But no, fantastic job. Encourage everyone to go check it out. eargluemedia.com/whiskey.
Yeah. And Mike, if you can, thank you. Yeah, that's a real good, easy way to find it. But if we can get that in the show notes, that would be a good way to kind of plug that as well. So yeah, please go. Again, the Barrel House podcast is the name of that show, which has a really fancy logo, by the way. So can't miss it.
Nicely by our.
Oh, that's right. I did the logo.
Artist.
Yeah, I forgot about that. No,
wow.
I'm kidding.
That was shameless.
It was shameless. All right, listen. Before we get last thing, just quickly. This is coming out in a couple days as of this show. So I think the 10th is Tuesday, right? This is when the new From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back. I've had a chance to read most of the stories in there. I haven't had to do all of them, read all of them this week. It's just a lot going on. But just if I could say, I can't say a whole lot right now other than I enjoyed this one more than the first one, and I enjoyed the first one. So if you really enjoyed the first one, I would definitely pick it up. If you were kind of on the fence of it, I'd still pick it up. And I can't recommend it enough. It's got some really good stuff in there. It's got some really great stories that feel like, again, nothing that really changes anything. It's all about giving you more context and fleshing things out. And, if you're like, Albert, and you've got to have the entire comprehensive story, or at least from some point of view, this is the book for you. Like, it really gets into some really cool stories on the side. And there's one that's not even a story. They did like a little animation cartoon. I won't spoil anything, but like a little comic strip almost. So really good stuff in there. So are you looking forward to this one? We need to do something with these books.
Yeah. Steph and I got to listen to she subjected me to the first one. Subjected. That sounds terrible. Some of the stories are actually really pretty interesting. I liked a few of them. And a few of them we had your head scratched a little bit. But again, I think it's just this, whatever your taste is, whether you like these types of stories or not, but I think they're really curious. And some of them are, what I was not expecting in the A New Hope one was some of the humor that they put into it. I mean, there were a couple I was dying laughing, like the Stormtroopers. I was just dying laughing. I think that was Daniel Jose Older's chapter. And Oh my goodness. It was hilarious. It was probably the best thing in the book. There were 2 or 3 that were just amazing and fantastic. So yeah, I am looking forward to this one because there are always something you can glean from it. And what is cool, and to your point, you do get a little bit different perspective of a scene or something like that. And every once in a while, it really does feel like it really added to it and added some, some sort of, different feel or different flavor to what you already know and see. And it's kind of cool to hear the lines from a different character.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. I mean, you summed it up really well. It does just give you it gives you another perspective, but it allows you to appreciate the story in a different way because you are seeing that other perspective as well. So
Really curious how they're going to do that comic strip with the audiobook, though. That'll be interesting.
oh, yeah. I didn't think about that. I wonder how they do that as well. Maybe I don't know. I guess they could just well, I can't spoil anything. Yeah. No.
Right.
Good thought.
Wait till Tuesday.
Yeah, wait till Tuesday before you see that. Good. Okay. All right, well, let's get into The Passenger. Let's get into this episode. And before we dive into all of the gory details about it, let's just talk just high level. Give me your overall impressions because I'll just kind of preface this or set it up as this was an episode that it didn't receive a lot of the hype or a lot of the discussion that the first one did. Now, to be fair, that first one had a lot going. I mean, there was a lot going on, right? I mean, they came out of the gate with the first episode in the season, pretty hot and heavy. This one scaled back a little bit. And you had a good comment. I don't want to steal your thunder. I'll let you say it. But give me your overall thoughts on what you felt about this episode.
Yeah, what I shared with you and with a couple other people, this was the first time it really felt like a TV show. With TV shows, you have episodes that feel like a little bit of filler or they just have this feel to them, right? And this episode really finally felt like a TV show. The other episodes we had, each one of them had its own kind of cinematic feel to it, and the effects and things on this one actually were fantastic. I have no complaints of the effects. All of the arachnids or spiders, whatever you want to call them, were really well done. And it was we can't get speeders right, but we can get all this stuff right. It's crazy, So that was fantastic. But it was really the first time where it actually felt like a serial type of show, and that threw me off because I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, we kind of expected this to be just the case from day one, but each of these stories has been so good, and so they really take you into each of those moments. You kind of forget it's a TV show, but
yeah,
this time, and I wish I could just put my finger on, it, but I can't quite do it. What about you?
So I think the word that I keep seeing used a lot is filler episode. And I know we talked about this in last season about, were there any filler material? And I think I had a hard time really saying that, it's hard for me at least. And again, my own perspective, it's hard for me to look at season 1 and say, yep, that episode right there, completely filler. Not necessary, doesn't do anything, doesn't build long. It's a monster of the week. It's a adventure of the week, whatever, right? It's none of these tropes that we have in Star Wars because they did a lot to build off of everything in season 1. And I get it though, because in this episode specifically, like you remove this episode and you ask yourself, okay, did we get any closer to, Moff Gideon? Did we get any closer to him finding sorcerers? Did we get any closer to him to find, and I guess it kind of checks some of these boxes, but it's so light that I do feel like I think people are right in saying that it does feel like filler. The one thing that I've said, and I said this the night that it premiered, and we stayed up till 4 a.m. my time, 5 a.m. my time watching this and talking about it on Discord, was it did feel like, or the one thing I should remember, or I'd like to have everybody remind everybody about is Dave Filoni, very rarely does he put anything in as quote filler, right? You may not get the immediate payoff, right? It may be another later in the season. It could be several seasons from now. God forbid, some of the stuff that he laid down that we know he'd laid down in the Clone Wars series never manifested because of all the cancellations and everything. But everything is done purposely. Everything has a purpose and everything has a reason for being in here. So while the big payoff of this may not be immediate, and I would even argue that the payoff for this may not be that big, right? Even the stuff that I'm going to lay out as being potential material that they'll pick up on, things that we may not really be looking at or may not be addressing on the because it's further down in the surface.
Right.
Those things may not pay off in a really huge way, but I think they'll pay off a little bit later. So what I'm saying is I don't know that he ever does filler. And I'm talking about Filoni. Favreau, though, is the key thing here. He wrote this, and we don't have, other than episode or season 1, we don't have a lot to go off of. And if we're just simply basing on it, taking on face value, then I don't think he's not done filler just yet, right? So that's kind of where I'm at now in terms of how I enjoy the episode. I thought it was a great episode. I liked it. I mean, it wasn't like rock your socks off, wall to wall action. There were some moments in there, like you said. I think it did feel more like a TV episode. That's not a bad thing, right? Not every episode has to feel like it's a blockbuster film released from Lucasfilm and Disney themselves. So yeah, it felt more, like you said, like a TV show. So I enjoyed it. I liked it. And hopefully we can dig into some of the stuff that I think maybe, again, is kind of flying under the radar in terms of relevance as we kind of break down the episode.
Right. Now, some feedback that we had from some of the folks that we listened to, because we also had a bit of a Discord watch party. We did a group with the Disney Plus app where you can do the group watch or whatnot. And we're going to try to do that weekly. We kind of did a pilot for the Saturday night, but some people kind of freaked out when it came to the spiders because they've got I don't know if it's arachnophobia or it's just all the Jeepers Creepers type of feel to things. So it was definitely interesting seeing how people reacted to, just a monsoon of spiders and some of the ick and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was interesting seeing the different perspectives and how that worked into Star Wars. And it'd be curious to see how we feel. Does this feel like Star Wars type of conversation that we haven't really had in a while?
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to how that turns out. And if we do, I think what we're planning on doing, not to break away, but it's probably a good way to talk about it just now. We may end up doing a watch party like the day of. So if you're up at 2 a.m. Central and want to watch it along with the 4 or 5 of us that are normally watching it, we're your party. Otherwise, we'll probably have other opportunities to watch it with you and some of the other members from the Earglubian network. So it'd be kind of cool.
Those of us that are not up at all hours of the night.
Yeah, those of you that sleep more than like 3 hours a day. So,
the normal people.
Not me. Okay, let's, all right. So again, that was overall thoughts. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into it. So the episode, and let me just, before I know somebody mentioned they had not seen this episode and they're actually with us tonight. Thank you for being here. First off, if you're with us live, we're recording this for the podcast. We are going to spoil the episode. So if you're cool with spoilers, stay with us. If not, turn this off, leave, go watch the episode and come back, hit the live thing, or just watch it a little bit later on YouTube or when the podcast hits tomorrow or Tuesday. So now that we've got the warning out of the way, let's talk about the passenger. So this one opens up with this trap, right? And I put in my notes here that it felt very Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner, right? Where you've seen this a million times in that cartoon where he's finding different ways to catch the Roadrunner. But this time actually worked. And we see that there's these, like, I'm going to call them junk scrappers. I've seen other people say that they were maybe bounty hunters, mercenaries. We can get into the question of, like, how did they know the Mandalorian was there? Who sent them there? Is he being double crossed by somebody like Peli, or is it, the remnants of Moff Gideon, or who knows, right? There's a lot of different theories as to why these people here. To me, they felt like they were just junk traders and taking advantage of a situation, but it was a very specific thing. Like, it's very specific in terms of where they set that up and knew where he was coming from or knew where he was going in order to kind of pull this trap off. But what did you think? I mean, let me just pause there. Did you get this as hey, these are just opportunists, and Tatooine or the Dune Sea is really vast, and it's not hard to know when somebody's coming and going from that area. So there's natural points for, like, choke points for traps, or do you feel like there was something more specific, something more purposeful here, and that they were going after the Mandalorian and or the child or the armor?
Right. And just to make a quick comment before, the cinematography leading up to this was actually really, really good around the speeder bike. I really enjoyed just the framing of the shots and whatnot. To answer your question, though, I'm with you. I think these felt like junk traders, junk scrappers, whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. They seemed to maybe have a little bit of muscle, so you could argue that they were some mercs and that they were in it for a buck. Clearly, they got tipped off or knew something that the Mandalorian or a high-priced target. They didn't seem to be overly interested in the child, though, which was interesting.
Yeah, right.
Right. And that might lead a little bit more to that they were really just after the Mandalorian, or they just knew they had someone who had a lot of wealth on them and they knew where it was going to go. And like you said, natural choke point, that seemed like a very natural choke point in across the dune. And I'm assuming it was just a safe route or something that Din was taken. But yeah, I'm not really playing into anything else because this is the way they behaved, especially at the very end. I mean, he's got the knife to the kid's throat, and really all he wants is a jetpack. So yeah, they're just scrounging for money.
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it. And again, if you go down the route of, oh, they were sent here to find the Mandalorian or capture him and or the child and or the armor, we can play the speculation game in terms of who that would be that sent them. And I think the natural paths again are Moff Gideon. It could be somebody from the Bounty Guild or somebody still upset there. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's Pelly, right? That she framed him. I don't know. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories. I think the simplest explanation is probably the most obvious, and that's just that these guys were opportunists. And the only thing this really does, right? You got to think, okay, so what was the purpose of the scene? Why was it in there? And I think it was a way to get the Mandalorian to have to walk to Tatooine and then be in need of help even more than he has, right? Beyond that, I can't think of any other reason that they would even have this particular scene in there, which he does. I mean, he eventually makes his way over to Tatooine. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the how he got away, because he gives the jetpack to that little Tito, and it's not Tito. He looks like Tito, right, kind of from the Force Awakens, but he gives the jetpack to him, and I mean he's got a clear shot. This guy is running away. It doesn't seem like there's much around there. He could have easily shot the guy, but I like the way that it was funnier, I guess, in allowing him to hold the jetpack, shooting him up into the air, and then letting him drop. I'm assuming to his death. But again, the child's just watching this, right? Kid's watching this like, oh, and he seems to be enjoying it. Like the child turns around, looks at him like, good job, Dad. That was way to stick it to him. Almost like Boba Fett and Jango Fett. But yeah, what do you think of the humor there?
Oh, the shrug was absolutely perfect. It was so subtle and great. I absolutely loved it. And yeah, I liked that he didn't shoot him in the back. I thought this was way more entertaining.
Absolutely. It was probably funnier that way. The fight itself, and when we kind of glossed over it, I thought the Beskar held up pretty well. I mean, took 2 shots. So again, reinforcing the fact that he is, for all intents and purposes, immune to blaster fire, if you will. There's probably weak points in there. And then there was that one line where he says, "There's no place you will be able to hide from, or able to hide him or hide from me," when he's talking about trying to get the child back. And I got shades of like Liam Neeson and Taken, right? Wherever I don't know who you are, wherever you are, I'll find you, kind of thing. It seemed like that was it. And then of course we talked about the bargain. But this was like, so, and I hate to say this because again, I did like the episode, but I think I liked this scene probably more than most of the other, like the rest of the episode. And I haven't really put my finger too strongly on why that is, but it just felt more in line with what we've seen with the Mandalorian. And I think it takes a departure, again, not in a wrong way necessarily, but I think it takes a departure once he gets to the planet and then engages with the spiders and that whole chase and everything else. So
is it just me? So the first fight in chapter 9 and this fight felt just a little underwhelming in general. I mean, they weren't as exciting, I guess, as some of the other ones, and maybe it's because they've just been a few. But the all of the fights in season 1 really felt intense, right? And they had a lot of energy to them. And these are just falling a little flat for me. Is that the case for you as well?
Yeah, I would say so. And that's not harsh criticism. I think this really, a lot of it, I think, comes down to editing and vision of the director, right? Okay. And I think when you look at some of the more the cool fight scenes, if you will, the ones that we really liked in season 1, I think it was just a credit to the directors and just how crisp they were, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, this one did feel a little short. It just didn't. It was just like half a second behind on a couple things. So yeah, maybe a little underwhelming, but it
could be the moments too. Yeah, it could be the moments too. The situation that they're in might just mean a little bit more in some of the ones we saw in season 1.
Yeah. Okay, so then he's got this walk of shame, right? He's got to walk back now.
I loved it, actually.
Yeah, I did too. And
I love the visual. Yeah.
Visually, yeah. Let's talk about that and tell me if, and certainly for those of you that are with us tonight, or watching, I was having a hard time placing where I've seen this imagery before. The only thing that I know I've seen this a million times played over is in anime or in some of the old samurai films where you've got the samurai walk in with this like buckets and right. And it's a long journey wherever he's going, up a hill, whatever. Right. It was a lot of shades of that, but I couldn't specifically pinpoint an example of where I've seen it. But man, it's like, it sticks with you because you've seen this before. But I thought it was great, that whole him walking in the Tatooine desert like that.
Yeah, and it shades of the old westerns too, when the lone gunfighter barely escapes with his life and he's trudging through the desert, it's hot, stumbling, you see the heat waving off the ground. You get just visions of that in your head. There's just more recollection more than anything else. It's not the exact same visual, but it returned those types of memories to me of watching some of those old serials when I was growing up that were really before I was born too.
Yeah. So he makes his way to the cantina, and there we find that Pelly's there. She's playing Sabak, which we know because of, she wins with an idiot's array. So that was a callback to the Solo movie. It's mentioned there, I think a few times actually. But seeing her play that, she's playing Dr. Mandibles, or Dr. Mandible, I think is what he's affectionately called. Was that his real name, or was that just something it came up, and I can't remember where I read it and saw it, but everybody's calling him Dr. Mandibles. I think that's officially his name. I just don't remember where it was spoken about or if it was in the credits. I didn't see it in the credits, so.
I didn't either, and I don't think they usually show the person that they played, but yeah, I thought it was almost a joke at first, like she was just poking fun at him. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've heard this before as well. I just can't place it.
Yeah. Okay. It's not really that important.
The giant ant.
Right. And we kind of skipped over this part, and I do apologize, but this episode was directed by Peyton Reed, right? And he was the one that directed Ant-Man. So when I saw this thing, I'm like, oh, look at him. He's sneaking in. And I forget the name of the main ant, right? The one that they kind of adopt as the family pet in the Ant-Man series. Is it Anthony? Maybe it is.
Anthony, yeah.
Yeah, but I was thinking, oh, this is a tribute to Anthony. And I think it is, because it certainly moves and looks and acts just like that ant from Ant-Man. But yeah, I mean, this is Peyton Reed, so pretty cool. But there was one line. So here's one thing that I thought was kind of interesting. When he's in there and he's talking to Pelly, he says, he wasn't Mandalorian. I bought this armor off of him, though. And he makes a very declarative statement of, he's not. He absolutely is not Mandalorian. I think that goes against the creed, and it goes against what I think we've been talking about with the Mandalorian all through season 1, now into season 2, that it really is a creed. It's not a, where you're born, or it's a birthright of any sort. Right. And I thought, well, that seems kind of harsh that he would be quick to label him as somebody who just, he just spent all this time with him. They went through a lot together. They obviously were, befriended each other, and I think he respected him at the very end of the episode. Why would he say he's really not a Mandalorian? But I think at the end of the day, does it just come down to the creed itself? Because he's even though he may have all the characteristics, and he certainly fits this new model of what a Mandalorian is, he's actually never pledged the creed. He's never actually gone through that effort. And so until he does, he's just being literal. He really isn't a Mandalorian.
Right. And I don't know if you can be a Mandalorian as an adult. I don't know that you can take that oath and really do much, because it seems like it's really more of you've grown up in the culture. That would be actually something interesting to understand a little bit better. When do they ever exclude certain age groups based on what they have? But yeah, I definitely agree. He's not a Mandalorian. He fought well side by side, so he's a good ally. He was honorable, and so he fits some of the criteria that you might look into someone. But again, didn't pledge, not worthy of the armor in that way. Didn't put in all the blood, sweat, and tears, and everything that goes into whatever the process is of actually making that pledge and that commitment. And again, I mean, he took the helmet off. So, I mean, there's a lot of, clearly he has no idea what goes into being a Mandalorian, Cobb Vanth this is. So it was a declaration. It was very clear. Yeah. Don't disagree with him. Yeah.
No, yeah. And the reason I bring it up is because, again, I'm trying to like rationalize all my headcanon and all the garbage I've spewed over so far as what's going to happen. I'm like, okay, so how does that fit into my story? So I'm looking for reaffirmation here, more than anything. So, Dr. Mandible is the lead, and there's a million questions as to how he knows the frog lady, and how the frog lady knows that there's Mandalorians in the next sector over. But, again, maybe some of that will reveal itself. It certainly didn't reveal itself in this episode. We just have to assume, okay, the knowledge is good, and it's okay for him to act on it. So we cut back over to the hangar, and it's at the hangar that we see that piece of meat. So we finally got the big revelation about where that piece of meat was going. We talked about it, and like, okay, where's it going? Is it going to go to Pelly? Is he going to sell it? But yeah, definitely she has it. Talks about how it's going to be cooked. And here's the thing. We'll talk about the eggs in a little bit and what Baby Yoda's doing with these eggs. But like for me, I think this was misdirection. They set this up so that you would be able to see this piece of meat being grilled and cooked. And then the baby's eyes just looks like he is, salivating at the idea of eating it. So he kind of sets it up with like, man, this kid is starving. All he wants to do is eat. And then, of course, we get the eggs being, quote, eaten later on, but I don't really think he's eating them. But anyways, I think that's why this was done. I think it was set to kind of start the misdirection of Baby Yoda and what he was wanting to do with the eggs and how hungry or how big of an appetite he had. And then we got the rotisserie droid, which she calls him Treadwell.
Yep.
And is that his official name?
Pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's the same droid from the original trilogy.
Okay. Well, and
I think that was his name in the original trilogy.
Was it? Okay. So then that would mean she's got R5 and Treadwell, and EV9 is also there. It's getting a little too close for me, but it's okay. Most people aren't going to honestly know that or remember that. So,
well, the EV9 droids are a dime a dozen, I'm sure.
Oh, sure.
Jawas was just special.
So the contact knows of a coven of Mandos in a system that's very close. No cost in terms of what it's going to take for the information or to anything. There's just one catch. Mando has to take this contact to that system, and they can't go into hyperspace. And let me stop there. I've got in my own head again a reason why this was there, why they explicitly said we can't go into hyperspace. But what did you think when you heard that?
Well, when they brought the eggs out, it made more sense to me, or at least I was able to get there. So something with hyperspace could affect the eggs or the unborn embryos or what it might be, whatever it might be, the reproductive cycle or the life-giving cycle. And that would make sense because your body goes through, and we see this with people in space and in the real world, that your body does go through some sort of change. Your joints expand and all sorts of other things. If we had Stargate Pioneer, he could probably tell us 100 different ways of how people change in space.
Right.
But you experience change. So it makes a lot of sense that there would be something harmful to the eggs that would happen if they were to go into a hyperspace. I wasn't really concerned about, the frog lady, but the eggs made a lot more sense to me that would be the case. What was your theory?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
We only have 33 more minutes.
So I think, my reasoning is, I think I'm actually not even simpler. That's probably not the word, because if you get in, like what you're doing is you're waxing science, right? There's a scientific reason why he couldn't go into hyperspace. And that all may be very true. And if it's not specific, even if it's not specific to us, we know nothing about the biology of the species and what hyperspace does to eggs in a vat for that species. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, that's all plausible. But I think for me, from a storytelling perspective, it made it a lot easier for them to say, or Boba Fett shows up next episode, couple episodes from now, and he's been tracking the Mandalorian this whole time, right? It's more plausible for me to believe that he was able to track the Mandalorian because he never actually made the jump to hyperspace, that because he was flying in subspace the entire time, he didn't have to worry about a tracker or what happens once they, blast it off. Now, you could say that if they did go into hyperspace, Boba probably could have chased down Peli, did something nefarious there, held her at gunpoint, or made her confess as to where the Mandalorian was going, and that's how he followed her. But this is just a simpler way, I think, of them explaining it. And again, even if he doesn't show up now, if he shows up 3-4 episodes from now and the Mandalorian still hasn't jumped around to hyperspace, or there are not any really good, strong leads, you can at least point back to this episode and go, oh, well, okay, well, that makes sense. He actually never went into hyperspace, so it was probably a lot easier to trail him than someone who just, popped off and disappeared. So,
well, and now we've got the crest and some serious damage too at the end result. So to your point, now we have a means for other things to happen, for them to limp to the next planet or the next sector or whatever it might be. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, it's definitely, it opened the opportunity for him to be intercepted in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so from there, he mentions that he's not a taxi, and I'm thinking like this is like he's an Uber driver at this point.
That's where it felt like a TV show. Hands on the hips. I'm not a taxi. That was the first moment where it was like it was. I mean, night as day. I was taken out of it for just a minute, just for a second. It was humorous, and I didn't mind it, but it was a bit casual for him. He's getting very, very casual. Have you noticed this?
Yeah.
He talked a lot in this episode.
Yes, he did. I can see that, and some of that I think is I don't know for 100. I don't know 100%, but like I think some of that may be attributed to the fact that it may have not been Pedro Pascal in the armor, it's really hard to know when he's in it and when he's not. We know in season 1 they were using those actors for pickup shots and different angles and stuff like that. So it's really the several actors, I think, right, that are kind of playing him off when Pedro's not doing the voice or in the armor. But I don't know, like, is Pedro in here 90% of the time when we see him, or is it 10% of the time and he's strictly doing voiceover? I don't know. But when I saw the hands on the hip thing, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it feels like it feels almost out of character. It feels like it's kind of over exaggerated, right? A little, it feels very kind of TV-ish, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I think over exaggerated is a good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah.
It did seem a little bit bigger than what we're used to with this character.
Yes.
He's usually much more subtle with this movement.
Yeah, yeah. And is that over exaggeration because there's intent there on Pedro's part, or is there over exaggeration because that's how the stand-in actor decided to portray it, and then once they laid the voiceover, the two don't exactly line up, and it kind of gives us pause a little bit. I don't know, but yeah, I get your point. Definitely felt a little weird, or a little bit. It kind of pulls you out of like the movie aspect and into like, okay, this is just a TV show, and that's still cool. But so the cargo itself, right? We know that she's got the spawn, which are these basically these eggs. She says that, well, she doesn't say. Pelly translates that the eggs need to be fertilized by the equinox, or her line will end. And that's when she mentions that jumping into hyperspace is going to kill him. Her husband, this frog's husband, is sitting on the estuary moon of Trask, which is in the Coloban system. Now, to my knowledge, I don't think we've ever had mention of either one of these. I went back and looked at some of the old books I've got and stuff, and of course online. Didn't see a whole lot. So these are all brand new entries that I think they're kind of going to start teasing out a little bit more officially, which would be kind of cool. And she says that her husband has seen Mandalorians on Trask. So let's pause right here, because if we line up what we know from the trailer, we know he's going to be there. In fact, there's a shot from the trailer where it looks like there are other frog species with these packs of fertilized eggs. And I don't know if that's her. I don't think that's her, because it looks like it's someone completely different. But this is a scene where they're on the dock and we get the hooded figure. I think that's definitely what we're going to see in the next episode. But I really start to question about, okay, so who are the Mandalorians? I don't think at this point it's the Death Watch folks or the Covenant that was on Navarro, right? The ones that he was with. These seem like they are a different group. So could it be somebody like a Sabine Wren? Could it be somebody like a Bo-Katan's group or some other splinter? So question to you, do you think it's going to be Mandalorians that we know from other series, whether it be Rebels, Clone Wars? Do you think they're going to have a prominent figure there? Or is this just a new group of Mandalorians that really has no tie to anything that we've seen before, because this is the beginning of their story kind of thing?
I think we're going to see someone we recognize, or at least that we've been exposed to in the past. It just, we already saw Cobb Vanth, so we've got some amount of credibility that they are cool with bringing in characters already established, at least in some way. And like you said earlier, Filoni loves bringing in things that he's already used before. And we saw in Rebels a lot of bringing in Clone Wars aspects left and right. And so I think it's very reasonable. I think it's a higher degree of a higher percentage to opportunity or probability that we would see someone. I think we're pushing like 75, 80% that we would potentially see a Sabine or a Bo-Katan or a, what's his name? Fenn Rau. So any of these characters, I think it's very possible that one of these will pop up. And I think it would make a lot of sense at this point. Because again, we need someone who's a bit more grounded. If this really is a quest to move around to different coverts for Mandalorians, that we need someone that has a little bit more weight and credibility to them, that they'd be able to, keep shepherding him around, and potentially, like you've estimated a couple of times, potentially temporarily join the crew for an episode or two as they move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited about the prospects. It really could be all three of those. And I think there's a lot of value and a lot of creativity that could be had in any one of those scenarios. But my preference is, I'd love to see that be Sabine Wren. And I think that Sasha Banks is the actress that's playing that hooded figure that we saw. And if it's not, that's okay. It could be somebody else from wherever. It doesn't really make a difference to me. But I think that person, let's just say this, I'll go online and say, I think that person is certainly one of the Mandalorians that they're seeking, because we know that even in the Rebels, right, at that time of Rebels, they were kind of running around through the streets, in the Clone Wars especially, they run around the street with their hoods on.
Well, hold on. She doesn't have a helmet on.
Well, that's the Mandalorian old ways. We know they took their helmet off though. All right, they took it off all the time. This new level, the new line of Mandalorians that Mando's a part of, they don't take their helmet off, and we don't know why that is.
Oh, okay, so you believe that there are new and old that subscribe to different ways of the history of what they were doing. Okay.
Yeah, I do, and that's only because I could be 100% wrong with that. And if I am, then I think they'll probably have to. Well, maybe they don't have to do anything, but I would like for them to explain why we went from the Mandalorians that we saw in the Clone Wars and the Mandalorians that we saw in Rebels, which wasn't that long ago, why they are allowed to take their helmets off and these aren't. I think we've talked about them not removing helmets because, at least for that group that he was with, they were trying to hide their numbers and the secrecy of it all. And, they don't want to expose the fact that their numbers are limited and have dwindled down since the Empire fell and all that. I think that makes sense. But, what if we have somebody like those Mandalorians who maybe they don't have their helmets off, but they have a cloak over them, right? Maybe that's enough to kind of hide who they are. They're not walking around with their flashy armor as the Mandalorian was, or the folks from his group. So yeah, maybe there's like these different clans and they have these slightly different takes on what's proper and what's not. Some of that may be rooted in where they came from, their origins, whether they were on Mandalore, carry over from the Rebels era of Mandalorians, or they could be rooted in the new ways of trying to hide their numbers and because of what happened with the Purge and all that. I just don't know yet.
Well, and I'm trying to remember the armorer's exact words. And when she asked, I think she asked him, have you ever removed your helmet in the presence of someone or in front of someone? So maybe that's a very literal type of comment to your point. It's not so much that you have been seen outside of your armor, but have you actually exposed yourself as, your true person under your armor? And it's more of so it was a very literal comment. Have you done it in front of someone, or have you, so maybe they can be out and about without their armor. That seems really inconsistent if that was the case, but I could understand spy networks and things like that if you want to go down that route.
Yeah. And I think one of the key takeaways, and we dug into a lot on this one here, but the Mandalorian is similar to the Frog Lady because they both have children, right? They're both trying to care for their children. So maybe that's why he has the soft spot and feels like, okay, I really need to help out here with it. But I did get like feelings of episode 4, where he says only the passengers, myself, the boy, 2 droids, no questions asked, right? He's looking for passage off Tatooine. It's kind of similar here in that she's looking for passage off Tatooine for different reasons, but it felt like that again, especially since this was kind of all stemmed right out of the cantina as well. So again, maybe it was a subconscious nod to episode 4, but I did pick up on it if it was. So they get in flight. He mentions that they need to wear their seatbelts because they're going to be in subspace. And again, this speaks to where we are when we talked about, is the galaxy safer? I mean, this is a direct callback to that episode because here we're talking about warlords, we're talking about pirates. He mentions that, in this day and age, someone either ends up with a nice chunk of change for turning you in for whatever reason or killing you, whatever, or they take over your ship. And that kind of speaks to the lawlessness that's going around right now in this day and age. And do you think we're going to see more of that? I mean, like they keep touching on little bits here and there, but I don't think they've ever actually thrown it in our face just yet.
If that doesn't scream Hondo, I don't know what does. Because that describes Hondo and the pirates to like a T.
Yeah.
Or just, it's pirating in general. I get that. But as soon as I heard it, I'm like, oh my God, please, can we get Hondo this season? Please, can we get Hondo this season?
Yeah.
I'm beginning to think it's less likely, but yeah, it definitely tells you the lawlessness or the pirating that's going on, the struggle for power. And like we talked about, it seems like the galaxy is in this weird in-between space. And we get a lot of this feeling when towards the end of the episode, when the X-Wing pilots help him out. We'll talk a little bit about that, but you definitely get that feel that, there's bigger problems in the galaxy. Handling everyone's little issues in between is not one of them, especially in the Outer Rim.
Right. Yeah. We get to the next scene, and here's where, I'm probably reading way too much into this, but we get the shot of him with the Baby Yoda and the eggs, right? The canister, you get him looking through it, some critical visuals there. He touches it. Yeah, I want to focus on that. I don't think people are talking about this enough, but he's looking at it at first, right? Go watch the scene again. He's looking at the eggs, and there's the music. First off, the music's very different than anything we've seen. This feels more the Force type music from like a John Williams, or it feels more like John Williams type music. That's number one. Number two, he's looking at the eggs. Everything seems sweet. Everything seems innocent. And then he turns his head. It cuts. They show him turn his head, look behind himself to see if anybody's watching, right? He looks to make sure no one's looking. Then he turns around. He puts his hand up to the glass. And the minute he puts his hand up to the glass, I'm not going to say the music changes, but it's definitely audible. I mean, it's prominent. How about that? At least for me, it was, right? Prominent. And then suddenly the eggs start to move towards his hand. It's almost like he's communing with them, or he's telepathically speaking to them. And I don't know, getting to know them, trying to understand how they're feeling. You got to think that, the time is running out. Maybe they are cold, or maybe they need something, who knows? But it's only after that he starts popping these suckers like pills in his stomach every 2 minutes in the show. And again, we'll talk about whether or not he's eating these things or not. But am I seeing way too much in here? But it just seems like those visual clues are there, and I don't think people are talking about that enough.
Yeah, the way I viewed this was, hey, I like this. I don't know why the music popped out to you, because it's all synth, right?
Yeah, that's true.
All the synthesizer stuff in this episode, you were probably just
I was all over
rolling in it. But yeah, I kind of viewed it as this. When he reached out with the Force, he felt all these little life forms. And no, I guess they weren't life forms yet, because they haven't been fertilized yet. Anyway, maybe he feels
something. They're eggs, right? So they're not fertilized, but they've got to have I assume they have some kind of a life force, a heartbeat or a life beat, that force beat. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but
in human biology, we have eggs, but they have to be fertilized. Anyway, he must have felt something in them, because you're right. Otherwise, why would they gather to him? And again, if we view this, instead of him drawing them, that they actually moved towards the child, that's a little different thing. And that's definitely the impression that I got, was that these things have some sort of life in them, because she's clearly taking very good care of them and everything else to make sure that they're safe. And she treats them like children of sorts, right? So that's the visual we get, especially after the ship is damaged. We get that kind of emotional scene there. But yeah, I viewed this as he felt something and reached out, and they had some connection there temporarily before he just succumbed to hunger.
So if you want to subscribe to the theory that he was just a glutton or gluttonous person or being that just wanted to eat these things, then you could say that, okay, he was just trying to like summon them or use the Force to pull them in closer to himself so he could look, and he's sizing up the menu, if you will, right? Maybe there's something there, but again, just the music, the way it was shot, something's going on there. And again, I don't think he's eating these things. I really don't. I know that sounds crazy, and it seems messy to have to explain. And it certainly, I think it diffuses some of the humor a little bit once we get into the episode itself. So, and I'm not 100%, like, I could go either way. I was fine with him after the first watch of, man, that dude's hungry, and he's just eating like this baby just constantly eats. And that's that's his little shtick, right? Right? We've seen it before. He's just throwing frogs down his throat whenever he finds them. Maybe this is all part of it, but I like the other side of it too. I like the fact that there's something there, and what that is, I don't know. Well, I'm assuming they're going to have to wrap that up in the next episode. This isn't something I think they're going to carry on for several episodes, but yeah, I can see both sides of it, I guess. We don't know how much time passes either, right? After we get the whole egg thing, we know that he says, hey, buckle up, it's going to be a long ride. And then he goes to sleep, and I'm assuming it's a few hours later. I don't think it's like days or anything, but it seems like a lot of time has passed. And this is where he's confronted with the X-Wings. And so they call him out as Razor Crest M111 or M111. They said he's not running a beacon, which I thought was interesting, because we hadn't really thought about this and I don't know. I'm trying to think of like legends and even more in canon books, if this has ever been discussed. But the assumption here is that if you're running around in space, sublight or subspace, or even in hyperspace, you have to have a beacon of some sort. And my guess, the more practical reason why you would have this is because you want other ships to know where you are, so you're not crashing into them, right? Same thing with like our airplanes, our airplane industry today. They've got to have a way to identify themselves so we can track them, so that they can plot logical courses and not have big mass explosions in space. And I think the same thing applies here. But it does sound like the New Republic, since the Empire fell, seemed like it wasn't such a big deal. Empire didn't care. People blew themselves up as long as they were tracking where they were at. Maybe they did. I don't know. But definitely with the New Republic, it seems like this is a requirement. They have to have some kind of a beacon turned on.
Yeah, and he said it was a pre-Empire, which I thought was interesting. Some of that, why I would imagine things got stricter when the Empire came in, and the beacons would be required with the with the Empire, but like you said, maybe they turn a blind eye to a few of the industries that they didn't care too much about. And again, maybe he travels different lanes, so it's not necessary. But I can understand why he would be flying under the radar and not signal him out. I mean, clearly he's trying to avoid attention at this point too. So why would you ping your location or make it available for someone to accidentally stumble over?
True. Yeah, I don't think it's more like I don't think it's a tracking device per se. It's just, it literally is a ping. I'm here. And there's probably some limitation, right? It probably has a natural field, again, to prevent those collisions or accidents from happening. Beyond that, I don't think it does anything more than that. But nonetheless, I think it's a plot point, or it's a plot mechanism to kind of evoke this, what transpires here from this point on, in that he's starting to feel a little uncomfortable here because he's got these 2 X-Wings. He's already called them a joke. I don't know if he truly believes that still or not, but they're starting to ask a lot of questions, and he's starting to feel really uncomfortable about what's being asked of him, knowing that his history, and we only know what we know. He may even have more history that we're not aware of yet with the New Republic, but he tries to pass off as being, one of the brothers, and he's like, "Hey, may the Force be with you." And that's like, the way he delivers that line is like so perfect. It's so awkward. He doesn't mean it, right? There's no sincerity in it, and you can pick up on every aspect of that. But I also enjoyed that they said, "and also with you," because that is something that I don't know if it's ever been said. Maybe it has. And it used to be something we talked about a long time ago ad nauseum about how do you respond to that? And is that appropriate response of, and also with you? But yeah, it is Catholicism at its core. And if you're a Catholic, or if you've ever been Catholic or know anything about Catholicism, when someone says peace be with you, your natural response is, and also with you. And so it's just been a carried over joke for so long. And the fact that Jon Favreau wrote this in there, I thought was really cool. So I'm like, it's officially canonized in terms of my perspective. And again, maybe it's been done before and I just missed it, but I do like the fact that I can now say, and also with you, and be like, cool, as with the cool kids on that.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, we won't dig into it anymore.
There was one moment though where he got really uncomfortable. And again, this is where it kind of felt like a TV show again.
Yeah.
Where he started stuttering and he was unprepared and he lost his cool. And it just seemed very out of character. And I get he was surprised and probably a little out of sorts, but he's always been such a cool customer all the other time. It just was very interesting that we had such a deviation from character at multiple times in this episode. It was really surprising. I didn't quite understand it. The inconsistencies kind of bothered me just a touch.
Well, and so maybe that I'll be an apologist here. So maybe what they're trying to do is show, because I feel like his character is changing, and there's a point later on that we'll get to here where I do want to highlight that as one of the key takeaways from this episode. I think we're seeing some growth. I think we're seeing some character develop. Again, small, not huge, not big strides here, but to this point, I think it feels like, there's chinks in the armor a little bit. He's not as, we're starting to see this not as gruff, not as polished. He's being exposed in a lot of ways because he's not having to just worry about himself anymore. He's now concerned about the child, and he's probably running through all the scenarios like, holy crap, what happens right now, right? The Razor Crest probably it's probably not in the best of shape as it is, number one. He talked about he doesn't have the element of speed here. Those X-Wings are pretty quick. I'm not going to say they're faster than the Razor Crest because we don't know, but they're pretty quick, so outrunning them is maybe not even an option. He's got precious cargo that is personal to him. He's got another passenger. He's got precious cargo there. This whole thing can be, the whole mission that he's got right now, his whole lot in life could be really in jeopardy if this all goes south. And so, I think it does expose him a little bit. And you're right. He does feel out of character. He does feel like he's really uncomfortable. And when he runs the limit of what he knows to do to kind of buy time and get out of this through like verbal negotiations, he just runs like, right. It was like right out of Cops. We got a runner, and start the Bad Boys music, and they're chasing after the guy. I mean, it's essentially what was going on here. They cornered him. He ran out of solutions, ran out of ideas. And so it was fight or flight at that point, and he chose to flight. So, but yeah, I think that maybe, and again, I may be reading too much into it, but if I had to explain it, I would explain it that way, that we're starting to see him become, I can say softer, but he's struggling. He's trying to deal with what's happening to him and where his priorities are and who he's looking out for at this point.
Right. And of course, we find out towards the end of the episode, they know who he is after they run him.
Yeah.
So they know his involvement with New Republic at that point, but he's probably thinking that as well. I don't want to tip off too much because I don't know how much they know because I was on this New Republic prison ship or whatever it was. And didn't want to get popped. And so it makes, I'm sure all those things were running through his head at the same time of making sure that he doesn't do enough to tip them off and just see if they'll go away naturally and play it off as, I'll get that fixed. And here's this thing. And we're fine here. How are you?
Yeah, Tuan says, "Yep, pop the trunk, Mando." That's exactly right. I mean, they were going to go in. Brick Republic clones. He's a single dad with a full-time job. Yeah, dude. He's just he's got a lot on his plate right now, so he's just trying to do the best he can. So
just an honest man trying to make his way in the galaxy.
Yeah, right. The frog lady starts. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say the frog lady. I'm going to go back to the scene here. Right before he makes a jump. There's one thing. So wait, hold on. Before we talk about the frog lady, the only thing that I felt was missing in the scene was music. And I get why they did it, because prior to this whole scene, as soon as the X-Wings show up, there's no music playing on. There's not even like an ambient sound or anything. It's just a dead silence of space. And I think what he was probably going for, Peyton Reed was going for, was just that, because when the S-foils lock into attack position, it's much more powerful, right? You hear the noise, you see it, and you know exactly what's going on. You're like, oh crap, right? Things are changing. He knows it too at that point. But it did feel like, I felt like this scene probably could have benefited from a little bit of music to kind of help build the tension, because I think it's hard, even with the Mandalorian, and we've credited Pablo and the actors for how well they're able to kind of express what's going on, even though he's behind a helmet. But this is one of the ones where I felt like if they had just added a little bit of music to help build the tension and help you kind of hear, through music what's going on in his mind, I think it would have probably done well. But they didn't, and it's a small critique, a small thing, but I really wish they would have added music here. So
yeah, I agree. It still worked as it was, but I agree with you. There was it could have added just a little extra something.
Yeah. So she starts freaking out. The frog lady's like freaking out, and they don't really explain why. The only assumption is that, hey,
she was asleep. I think she got startled awake.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, I think that was what it was, because she was asleep when he went into the cockpit.
Yeah, well, I know she gets up and she's like frantic and talking about it, and then he turns around. He's like, "Hey, be quiet." I think is what he tells her. So yeah, maybe she got startled because she woke up. I'll need to go back and look at that, but I was questioning what she was doing. If she wasn't privy to what was going on, and that definitely makes way more sense as to why. All right, so we talked about the music thing. We talked about the S-foils being locked into attack position.
Neither one was Luke Skywalker.
Neither one was Luke Skywalker. Darn. Well, I mean, again, what did we have that at? Like,
we got a whole lot wrong about this episode, by the way.
But to be fair, we had percentages tied to them, and that was one of the ones we said was like 10%, I think, is what we said.
True.
So,
well, even the planet, we have no idea what planet we were going to.
No, we didn't know it was Trask, I think. So yeah, we definitely got that one wrong. So they ask him about, and so you brought this up, and I think this is an important part, and this is where the character development for me comes from. They ask him about whether or not he was around Bothan 5 and the New Republic Correctional Facility, the transportation facility, and that's as far as they get. Right? He starts hearing all that, and he's like, "Holy crap! I can't hear anymore. I got to go. Yeah, this is getting way. I already know what they want." Right? He's making some assumptions about what the New Republic wants from him. That's when he books it. Hold that. We'll talk more about that when we get to that moment when they finally kind of reveal the rest of the story, if you will, at that point. So he takes off into the planet, and they're right in pursuit with him. Man, tell you what, like the sound of the X-Wing, I can just listen to that hum. Like someone needs to put that on a audio box or a WAV file or something so I can go to sleep with that. But there's just something about the humming. Yes.
Yeah, and the whine that goes behind it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's just a great sound. It was and they did it so well in this episode. My gosh, it was like right out of episode 4 or any of the episodes where you're inside the cockpit for any good amount of time, and you can just hear that humming, whining sound coming from the X-Wings.
Right.
But yeah, he goes into this free fall maneuver. He's at one point he's getting chased and he's in the atmosphere. But I didn't understand. Well, and I have a theory. It's weak at best, but as to why he decided to kind of cut the engines and go into this free fall as opposed to continue to be chased by them. Any thoughts around that? Did it bother you at all that he did that?
No, I think it's one of those things. If you cut everything trying to reduce how they can scan you, and if you do a free fall, presumably they're scanning out, less so vertically and horizontally. Of course, they were probably scanning in a bunch of different ways, but I imagine if he cuts a lot of the engines and all that stuff, he's just more difficult to track, is how I reconciled that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably the more logical one, honestly. The other part of it was I didn't know I didn't know if like maybe going as fast as he was going to do something to his hull. The entry, maybe there's something broken there. It could just be a purely tactical evasion maneuver, like you said, but it was just weird that he did that.
Didn't work very well.
No, because I mean, he didn't, it
Comes
seemed
out
like
of
he
it
came
right
out too
behind him.
late. Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, right. Number one, it felt like he pulled out too late, because he was already kind of cutting it closer as he was getting into that canyon. But then two, they were still kind of right behind him. So it didn't really buy him a whole lot. So, again, they probably won't explain that. And we don't necessarily need to have it explained, except if you listen to this show.
You sure?
Yeah. But he eventually crash lands on the planet. And so we get this is another moment where we saw in the trailer, we finally got it. Man, there was a lot, sorry, just as an aside, a lot of the stuff that we saw from the trailer was like, or has already been revealed in this episode and in the first episode,
Yeah,
which I
not
think bodes
surprising.
well.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I think
I think
we're
we're
going
in
to
for
see
a
a
lot
lot
of
of new
surprises.
stuff. Yeah, a lot of surprises, a lot of new material, which is what we want, which is fine. But
This is usually the case though with teasers and trailers. You get a lot of the first few episodes because they start piecing those together early on as they're finishing effects on the later episodes. So I think this is typical. I don't think this was surprising, but I'm with you. I think this is great news for us later on because we'll have more surprises and things that we're not expecting, and we can kind of truly enjoy the journey that we kind of go through each episode or each chapter.
yeah. So it comes to a halt. The engine, I mean, the Razor Crest falls through the ice. It lands. I mean, this thing is, I mean, it's destroyed. I mean, it really is taking a beating. And we missed, he was hitting some of the caverns as they were coming in, hitting stuff.
Well, he was all right even when he kind of slid in backwards. Actually, all that worked out pretty well, right?
It wasn't until he fell that I think
when he fell, I mean, the bottom literally fell out of it.
Right.
God,
right.
That was terrible. That was that was something you would say.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love that you preface something I would say with that was terrible. So thank you, Jonesy. Yeah. There's no, you're right. When that thing fell down, the bottom came out, but the hull is compromised at this point, and this factors in a little bit later.
Yeah.
But with a compromised hull, there's not a lot you can do with the ship, and that's, and I don't want to jump ahead, but that's why we see it in such disarray a little bit later in the trailer when we see it kind of, on its last leg heading into what we assume at this point is Trask, the water planet there, the water moon. So anyways, it lands there, and the first thing I thought is, they've got a reptilian type character on an ice planet. Her body temperature's got to be dropping. If their science is our science, right? I'm not make an assumption here, but if it is, that's
cold-blooded.
Yeah, cold-blooded. And he gets out. He's looking for the eggs. He's looking for the child. And this is where we see the child, and he's sitting there popping an egg. You just pop one, and
stress makes people hungry, man.
Stress eating, is that what he was?
Yeah, that's right.
It's been a stressful week for sure.
When you're 50 years old, man, cut some eggs, eat some eggs.
But this is when he pops that one in his mouth. Okay, one, it's funny, like it really is. I think they did a good job with the comedic timing here. Every time he's eating one of these things, and the Mandalorian, how he responds to it, like especially when he's like later on, he's like, no, right? Like that's great. A total dad moment right there. Like, I've already told you this 5 times. Don't do it again. You're gonna be in trouble, kid. But yeah, when he popped that one in his mouth, that for me, it was on the second viewing of this episode that I was like, okay, he's not eating these things. I don't think he's eating them. And I don't know if it's just because of the way it was filmed or whatever. It's still funny, don't get me wrong, but it's just so like, it's out of character now for me. I get he's hungry. I get he wants to eat. But if this child can feel or sense that there's something there, he's got to be able to sense that he's not that desensitized. He doesn't know that this mother is carrying these things around. He's got to maybe understand why we're doing this, right? And then just to be so cold-blooded, I don't know, it's not good. To be heartless like this, to go eat these eggs from this mom, I just think that's out of character. I think he's coming from a good place and he's doing something else. And the only thing, this is not my theory. I know a lot of people came to this conclusion that somehow he's harvesting these things or sheltering these things in some way. My mind goes to, why would he do this? Is it because he was able to sense something from them? Did he communicate with them? I know people are saying, well, he can't communicate with them because they're not fertilized. Forget all that. You're trying to apply real world science, like real life science to all of that. We don't know what this is like. But that aside, is it something like a force vision? did he see that he needed to save these things, or does he understand that, with these eggs, something else is going to happen? And so he's got to at least protect some of them. And the way he's doing this is popping them into his tummy, which then speaks to now we're getting into the biology and of this species. And I start thinking, how many things did Yoda eat and regurgitate? And is this just a thing that they do? I mean, it goes into some horrible places at that point. But any thoughts around, let me just pull the Band-Aid off. Is the child eating these things, or is he saving them? Is he protecting them? Is he harboring them in some way?
Well, he's burping. So I'm going to go that he's eating them. I do feel your discomfort though with that it doesn't seem the first time. Okay. He didn't know any better, that type of thing. But when it starts becoming a pattern, you're like, what the hell, kid? Like you are doing something bad, because this is the last of her, what she can produce on her own, right? This is the last of her life cycle. And it just seems wrong. I mean, how is she not pissed anyway? I mean, she's got to be counting these things, right? And know that they're not all there. I mean, how is she not mad at this kid and like protecting them at all cost against him? Because if this was happening to my like potential offspring, I'd be all over this kid and be like finger wagging and everything, I guess, but harsh words. But I still think he's eating them though. It feels out of character. I'm hoping you're right. I don't know how they would explain that though. But man, it sure looks like eating. And then you got to go back and explain all the frogs and everything else he's, chowed down soup.
Yeah.
And is the soup down there feeding the eggs? I don't know.
I'm not like, I know I'm sitting here making the defense for him not eating them, but at the end of the day, like you said, I'm actually okay with him eating them. I think there's something there, and I think it's funny, and yeah, it's a little dark, but that's okay. Right.
Right.
On the surface though, you see this and I think everybody's first inclination is, oh, he's eating these things. The only other thing too is he swallows them. Like you never see him eat or chew. Like he's, when he ate the spiders, he chewed the spiders. When he ate the frogs, he uses jaws to chomp those things down. And this,
but those were bigger though. Those were bigger and longer. So he had to like get multiple gulps as he gets them down.
Yeah.
These are slurpable. These are like those little beads you can buy like at Target, they're in the jars with all the,
like the bath beads.
Orbeez, whatever.
I don't know what those are.
I don't know I forgot what they're called. It's been a few years since I've played with these things.
Okay. Well, again, this is the egg dissection episode. I don't know. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other.
Let's move on.
Okay. We'll move on. So let's see, where are we in the notes? How many did he eat? It was the question. He's got that like gel around his lips. I mean, he's guilty. It looks like a kid that's just found a chocolate bar and you put it behind back and I'm like, what did you just do? Nothing. Oh yeah, sure. But yeah, he does burp. So maybe. And then so Mando starts trying to, she's coming to him. She's yelling at him, talking to him. He's like, sorry, I don't speak frog. And, we can only assume that she's trying to tell him at that point, look, we need to get off this planet. My eggs are going to die. It's cold, that kind of thing. She sees Zero's head, and this is right before they go to bed. She sees Zero's head, and we learned something about her, that she's actually got some technical background, because when he wakes up, he's talking to Zero, the droid, and she says that she used the vocabulator to kind of do that so that she could speak to him. And this is where she says, look, we had a bargain here, and you need to fulfill this bargain, and we've got to get off this planet. And he was thinking about going to bed and picking this up in the morning. And she pulled him right out of bed and said, no, let's go fix this. We got to get out of here. Time's kind of running out. So I think the one thing that's kind of interesting here is he finally gives in, because she kind of guilts him into, what about the Mandalorian code, right? What about your honor? What does this say about you? You as a Mandalorian, if you truly are a Mandalorian, you need to do this right here and then. And that was kind of his breaking point. He finally, begrudgingly decided to do it. But yeah, she kind of got to him when she threw that up and used it against him.
I think a couple things here. I didn't view him as giving up, right? And I've seen some that said he was giving up, and I don't think
giving up or giving in. I mean, they're different things in my opinion.
Well, he was giving up in the first place by telling her to cool it, and they would do it in the morning. Because some of what he was saying makes a whole lot of sense. Hey, it's going to, like, nightfall's coming. We don't exactly know when. It's all possibility the temperature is going to plummet. Let's hunker down for tonight. We get up in the morning. We'll have a better idea of where we're at and what we can do. What I think he didn't understand though was the urgency around the eggs though, and just how much life was left in them. And so I think when he started putting those things, put two and two together for some of that, it made a lot more sense that he did need to have that urgency, and he begrudgingly, quote unquote, begrudgingly did that just because it was against his better judgment, like knowing that this would be better if we did this at the start of a day. We've had a long day. We need the rest. It's going to be really cold tonight. And, what are we going to be able to do? And think of it with a clear head. So I think that's where I viewed some of that dissonance there with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jackson brings up a good point. I actually had that in my notes too. There is a bar, like they cut over to it just very quickly, but on the tank, you can see what looks like a readout, and there's only 2 bars left. I don't know. I guess that's the energy, right? To keep these things warm, the incubation thing or whatever. Maybe that's part of it. Because, jumping ahead, she ends up finding a hot spring. Now, how she found that, maybe she's familiar with this planet already, since, it's very close to where they would go to fertilize these things. And so it would, not too far-fetched to think that she would know something about that within the caves. There's a possibility of a natural spring. Maybe her species is, evolved over the millions of years to find these things, and she has a radar for hot springs. I don't know, but yeah, good point. It does. They do show that little readout there on the tank. So I think that she was trying to explain, look, we're running out of time. Do what you need to do. Do what you said you were going to do. So he heads out, decides to go repair the ship, and man, that ship is in pretty bad shape. There's like something spewing out fuel or whatever the heck that was.
Yeah.
And he starts the repairs, and I was thinking, oh, we're going to get a montage again. No, not this time. We didn't really get one. So darn.
We had a lot of fade to black. We had like 2 or 3 fade to black in this episode, which was interesting and very different for us.
Well, and they're doing it like, if I'm picking up on what you're talking about, they do it to kind of help show time elapse, right?
Absolutely. Right.
It's not huge amounts of time though, right? It's like hours.
It's like an Empire. They did this when Han's building the shelter. Same type of principle.
Yeah, exactly right. We fade to black, and next thing you know, it's morning. Oh, okay, we get it, right?
Right.
But good point. Good catch. They do that a few times here in this episode. He starts those repairs. The kid takes off, and then he's, Baby Yoda's standing there looking at him. He leaves, and he goes after him and realizes, and he's just kind of standing there looking off in the distance. And another significant piece here, again, small, but I've never seen the baby talk this much. Like he's on like full on sentences here. He's like, it's gibberish, but he is 100% communicating in long, complex phrases, sentences. It's babble, right? We don't understand what he's saying, but I think that we're inking closer to him to actually say something. I think, again, kids naturally, when they get to this point, when they're just chattering, you're like, okay, they're on the cusp of actually saying something that's worth recognizing or able to recognize.
Yep.
But same concept here. He's definitely talking. Go back and listen to it. There's a lot of something coming out of that kid's mouth when he's trying to explain what's going on. And of course, Mando.
That's where we're headed. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Mando either interprets that or just says, oh, let me check it out, puts the little visor on, can see the heat wave signatures or whatever, sees the tracks. And that's how they go ahead and track her. And they go into the cave and find her sitting there in the hot tub. Now, as they were going through the cave, I was like really on knife's edge here. I was like on the edge of my seat thinking, okay, because I was, remember, in my headcanon, I had this theory that we were going to see they were in Ilum. Crystals were going to start lighting up. Oh man, I was so excited, and didn't happen. But we got a hot tub. What do you think about the hot tub?
It looked very warm and hot, and we had a naked frog. I mean, we had nudity in Star Wars finally. So there you go.
Yeah. Well,
it was tasteful.
It was tasteful. I'm trying to think of who else was nude. Jabba was pretty nude. Not a lot of clothing.
Mostly nude, except for his back to diaper, I guess.
We need to do the top 10 nude characters in Star Wars. Let's do that as a bonus
Chewie's
episode.
Number 1.
Chewie's number 1.
Right.
We should do that as a bonus episode. Anyways, so no, and it's a hot springs, right? And she took these things out, threw them into the spring, and she's just chilling there. And you got to think the Mando's like, what in the world is going on here, right? Like, and maybe he was all of us at that point, because when you see that, it's jarring. Like, this is not where I thought this episode was going to go. I didn't think she ran off to go get into a hot tub. Now, again, the science behind all of this is, well, she's got babies and they're getting cold, and okay, makes sense that she would maybe go there to help. And I think she even says it. I think she says a line and something about like, or maybe I'm making that up. I could have sworn she says something like, I need to warm them up, or Mando says, I know it's cold, or something like that, right? To kind of infer that that's why she did that. She went out there to go find this thing. She took a big risk though, again, in heading out, leaving the comfort, the little shelter that she had, and diving into a cave that she's not familiar. I mean, she obviously knew enough about the springs that it was going to be there or what it could do for her, but she didn't seem to know much about the ecology and the little spider eggs that were all over. I mean, she's sitting there smack dab in the middle of a nest of these spider things there as well. So it was a pretty risky move on her part.
Well, I mean, they're in a dire situation though too, and we all know parents and mothers in particular will go to extreme things to keep their kids safe and to do what needs to be done in order to take care of them. And she found something, and it was well worth the risk, I think, for what she needed to accomplish.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get caught up on the chat. I don't know what's going on. They're talking about Kirby and Kermit and Miss Piggy. It's a trap. It's all off the rails over there. So we'll come back to that here in a little bit. This is where he scolds the baby. And he's like, no, like, don't you eat another one of these things.
Oh yeah.
Especially right now.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. They were trying to scoop him up and you get just the finger in the frame.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's a really good shot. I love it. And, so we get so the baby finally turns around and walks off, and it's probably following its nose, but it finds these eggs. And this is like screaming to me of Aliens, right? This is right out of the Aliens movie. It's out of the Prometheus movies, which are the prequels, if you ever saw those. Definitely a nod to that, I think, in a lot of aspects. But, he goes over to that first one there, and the music here is awesome. Like, this is really heavy synth. It's very Stranger Things. I had somebody ping me that night and was like, I bet Albert liked the synthwave music that was coming out. It sounded like Stranger Things. And I'm like, oh yeah, I really liked it a lot, but it is different, which is not a bad thing. I really like that the use of music in this scene particularly. He starts, he eats one of them, and then we see they start opening again, very similar to Aliens, and suddenly they all start coming out. We got the smaller spiders, the medium spiders, and that's all followed by that huge queen-looking spider at the very end. But right. What did you think about this? Because I think, one, I wasn't expecting this. No. Two, I really enjoyed it because it was different for me than just, Minox, right? Or I'm trying to think of other scenarios in Star Wars where we had them. I mean, we've had plenty of spiders before. We've talked about the
Bomar monks.
Yeah, Bomar monks. We've had the Kryknas from Rebels. Those are the force sensitive ones. And those were kind of creepy as well. But seeing these things and the way they did, I know it freaked out a lot of people. Like I saw Twitter was like on fire right when this happened because a lot of people have arachnophobia, which is a real thing, and I'm not dismissing that at all. Like if you've got arachnophobia, I don't think you were expecting the amount of spiders and the amount of creepiness from this episode. So, you got the director of Ant-Man, so what do you expect? But I thought it was great. I actually really enjoyed this a lot.
It was freaky. I mean, we were watching a live stream. There was shouting of no, and like no. Like the freakouts were real, folks. It was very, very different. And I didn't mind it though. It was really uncomfortable. It was a little uncomfortable at times because I was like you, it really felt like Aliens, a lot like Aliens, with even when he's eating the spider, you can see how it peeled into like 4 pieces there, like a petal.
Right.
Just really a direct callback. I think it probably very intentional. But yeah, no, I mean, this was intense. I mean, because you're just like, oh, okay, well, we know where this is going. This is where you are consumed by the horde. And there is no way out because there are just infinite numbers of these things. And I think, I don't know, we all went to bed a little bit creepy of like checking the bed again and any little movements or feels you have on your arm when you go to sleep. I hope anybody nightmares tonight. But yeah, I mean, it kind of freaks you out. It's kind of creepy and it's uncomfortable. But I thought it was really cool though. And again, the CGI was fantastic right here. And all of the effects and the kind of the action of it as well, I thought was really entertaining. And we got to see more of the grenades or whatever you want to call the devices that he has, of the resourcefulness. And man, he's a crack shot with that blaster. Let me tell you.
As are the X-Wing pilots. I was pretty impressed with their shot. Like they didn't miss once. So contrast that to stormtroopers, but that's another story. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and just in full disclosure, and I know there's been a lot that's been said about this, but just so that we've had a chance to talk about it, the design was inspired from the Nabi white spider from Empire Strikes Back. So that is some Ralph McQuarrie concept art that was done for Empire Strikes Back. And originally this spider, and it's more like the queen, like the big one, right? That's what we see. Very similar here. The Krykna that we saw in Star Wars Rebels was actually inspired from this as well. But Phil Shostak, and I won't get into who he is, but just trust me, Phil Shostak was on Twitter when this episode was gone, he does it every night. He has this thing where he says, all wings check in, and it's your opportunity to ping him and let him know that you're watching. But he is one of the creative people on the creative team. And as soon as this episode finished, he posted immediately that this was a new species. So this was not the Krykna. It was not the knobby white spider, but it was a tribute to both of those. But this was a brand new species, although it looks very similar to the knobby white spider that Ralph McQuarrie did. And if that had played out, if they had used this, that spider would have shown up on Dagobah. So if you look at the artwork, you can see Luke there. He's got his X-Wing pilot, his like jumpsuit on. He would have run into this spider on Dagobah, and that's where it stems from, which I think I like because, that's where Yoda's from. We've got baby Yoda here. I just like the tie and the parallel here that they decided to use it in this episode in particular.
Right.
So they're at this point, it's a chase, right? They're trying to get out of there, trying to get back to the ship. There's tons of these things that are coming after them. You mentioned Mando using the explosives to take out the queen spider. At least we thought he took it out. That shows up a little bit.
I thought he did. I thought the one that came back
was a different one.
Was the daddy spider? Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. That one was dead.
Okay.
I think that was Mama and this was Daddy.
All right, I'll take it.
Much larger.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think now I'm thinking about the perspective of it all. Yeah, especially when the Razor Crest lifts off, that's a creepy image of those legs still just kind of hanging on there, and they kind of slowly slide off the turret. Oh, I thought that was great. But yeah, I think you're right. I think definitely is bigger there. So, and it reminded me there was a lot of the spider itself that conjures up a lot of memories from all kinds of movies. I even like Lord of the Rings. I think it was Two Towers with the spider, right? All that stuff kind of it's reminiscent of a lot of it here. But going back to like the Aliens references, right? There's a moment there where they cut away. He's charging up his flamethrower and they cut away and all you get, and I love the way he did this. You see the flame go off like and they come running out of the side of the shot there. That was a great way of not showing anything and letting your imagination go, but that is very like Aliens and what Ripley does to all of the alien eggs. She's frying them all. We get some of that a little bit later as well, especially when they get inside the hull and the doors are trying to close and you can kind of see them all crawling and stuff. There's two scenes in particular out of Aliens it's like a callback directly to with the face hugger trying to come through and it's got its tail and it's like lashing at it and stuff. I mean, it was really good stuff. Like, I really enjoy this. And it's not something that I was expecting from one Star Wars or two from a Mandalorian episodes. I think they caught a lot of people off guard with this episode, especially given where it was going. Because up until this point, like I said, we've been talking about eggs and we've been talking about the biology of frogs and Yodas and all this stuff. And suddenly, boom, you get thrown into this new kind of story where you're
almost like a horror movie of sorts.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a little bit stressful there. But when they get into the ship there, there's another scene like when the spider's like dancing on the baby, it's like on the baby set. I'm like screaming, like, save the baby. What's going on? Like, shoot that thing. It's going to kill baby Yoda. So I don't know. I got really excited in a good way when that happened. I was very worried for the baby since he had a spider on his. The thought of a baby, any baby with a spider on the head scares the crap out of me. And thankfully the frog, right? The mom was like, I'll take care of this because the Mando's obviously not paying attention to his own child, but She took care of it. So thank you, Frog Lady, for saving our baby Yoda.
Even though he's eating your
your children. Yeah.
God, this is so messed up.
Let's just, let's not talk about that. There's nothing to see here. So, yeah, like, how does he feel now? He's sitting there popping, little frog roofies and suddenly, she does that. It's like, what do you think, man? You're not even, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We'll see. So they escape. He locks himself into the cockpit. They try to take off, and that's when that big spider comes back and starts attacking them. And then they're saved, of course, by Captain Carson Teva, which is played by Paul Sun Hyung Lee, and Tapper Wolf, which is Dave Filoni. So he's coming back in this episode, and we'd already heard him, but they finally caught up with him, I guess, at this point. So. Yeah, and I stole my next talking point, but they were marksmen. The fact that they were picking these things off as they were is like stark difference between what we see from the stormtroopers. And maybe that was intentional, maybe it wasn't, but
and presumably they took the big spider out with the X-Wings because we did hear
the
sound of the X-Wings guns, right?
Yeah, it absolutely changed, right? You could hear the bigger guns, if you will, from the X-Wing, and then it goes into the little blaster rifles that they were using to pick off the spiders one by one outside there. And so now we get the full story in terms of why, what they were really wanting to do, because he says we ran the tabs on the Razor Crest, he says we run the tabs. I'm assuming those are like license
like your plates.
Yeah, right. I don't know. It's like Star Wars stuff. We ran your license plates, and he says that
you ran the Carfax on your VIN.
Yeah. He says there was a warrant for the abduction of prisoner X6911, which is actually the name of Quinn Kin from Chapter 6, Season 1, right? So the prisoner episode,
right.
That is the Twi'lek, the one that got away, the brother.
The brother, right.
Yeah. So and they don't mention this, and so I was thinking, like, I was hoping they would give us some more detail here about whether or not he's actually on the loose, or after what when we last saw him, that space station was getting shot up by the X-Wings. Did they capture him? Is he dead? We don't know. He doesn't really say in here. So he's either dead, or he's in prison, or he's on the loose. And if he's on the loose, then you got to think he's going to come back for the Mandalorian at some point. So who knows? We'll find out here, maybe, hopefully someday. But then
definitely got confirmation the other three are in prison and they were high value targets.
Yes. And that was the whole key here, right? They were trying to tell him that, look, we know that you did that. However, we also saw that you apprehended Jean, Mayfeld, and Berg, right? So that was their way. So they were really going to say, I guess, thank you. They weren't trying to bring him in, I think, at the end of the day, right? At least that's what we're kind of put two and two together here. They also
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're getting there.
Yeah, they also said that, they saw through the cameras that, number one, he protected Lieutenant Davin, who was of the Correctional Corps. And they asked him, is this true? Mando doesn't answer. Like, he never answers a question about whether or not it's true. And I think at this point, he's just kind of like, I don't want to say anything. I don't know what they're playing here. I don't want to incriminate myself in any way. He just decides to be quiet. And the only thing he responds with is, am I under arrest? Right? He says, am I under arrest? And he says, technically you should be. However, these are trying times. Yeah. So this speaks to a lot, really, right? It speaks to where we are in the galaxy right now. Again, because of the fall of the Empire, you can't go around. You got to kind of pick and choose your battles. You kind of pick and choose, who you let go and who gets to stay, right? They're probably going only after the worst of the worst. And given that he's done all these good deeds, it's probably okay. They probably have a good image of him that they're willing to let him go. Mando doesn't know this. He does now. But, well, give me your thoughts here, and then I'll get into one of the character development pieces here.
Yeah, I don't know that they view him as a good guy. I think they view him as, well, he's not the worst, and he's not necessarily a bad guy. So we will focus on, but why'd they even follow him after they ran the tabs on it all? I mean, what purpose did that serve? I mean, it served to save him, of course, and get us off the planet eventually. But I think in general, I think they were just indifferent to it. But I agree with you. This kind of gives you an idea of where we're at with the times. If the galaxy was stable and safe, for lack of a better word, he probably gets brought in at the very least and further questioned and things like that. And, at least you might get let go at the end of the day because, yeah, you did do some good things, but they don't, they just don't have the resources to keep expending on this. And they've probably been here too long already, what they were chasing. And until they recognized what it was and what the possibilities were, then they felt like they had to follow up at the very least to check it out. Mm-hmm. Probably also to see if the prisoner that they were missing, Quinn, was with him or not as well. And they didn't really follow up on that, though. So it was a little bit of a disconnect there. But yeah, I think it was an opportunity for them to kind of wrap up the story. I think we were speculating whether we would see these characters. We definitely now have heard them referenced. I think this was a great way to reference them, actually, and bring these pilots in. At least the Filoni was there for the space station, of course. Yeah.
So and you may not agree with this. I'm not saying he's a good guy. I think we're starting to see him become a good guy. And I think more importantly, though, that aside, more importantly, I think Mando is starting to realize that things have changed for him. He is changing. People are starting to see him in a different light. There's now, if you think, well, I'll say that for the end, but he's got karma here. Like, the good deeds that he did, the things that he did do, are paying off. Right? This could have gone really bad for them. There's nothing to say he would have made able to repair the ship and got off the planet, or those spiders would have killed him. Right. So the seeds that he sowed late long ago are now starting to bear fruit for him. And I think this is going to change him. I think this is going to help develop him, and it plays into the larger theory of who he eventually will become, and who's willing to side with him and support him, whether it's the New Republic and all of that. But I'll touch on that here a little bit more. I'll give you a better answer here.
So hold on a minute.
Yeah.
So if he had good karma, were they just jerks to leave him there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Trapper is like a jerk. Like, and I don't know if Filoni's doing this on purpose or Favreau's writing this on purpose, but he's had already a couple comments where you're like, in the when we first saw him in The Prisoner, he was the one that was kind of like, let's just kill him, man. Like, I forget the line or whatever, but yeah, I got the sense that he was kind of a jerk face there. And in this one, he seems very, at least the way he talks. I really think he is just kind of a jerk character. They both may be jerk characters. I don't know, but
because they kind of left him there to potentially die.
Well, they did, because he said, hey, can you come help me? He's like, can you, what was it?
Fuse my hole.
Yeah. Fuse my hole. And their counter was, no, why don't you fix a transponder and we won't vaporize you the next time we see you in the rim.
I can't use the word that I called them when that scene came on.
But yeah, 100%. Like it's like how magnanimous of them that they allowed him to move on. But I mean, they pretty much, they're kind of leaving his fate to his own, right? They don't know what's going to happen. They could have escorted him. They could have done that, but they decided not to. So again, I don't think to your point, I don't think they were being like really good to him or good for him. But I think for Mando, I think this is a moment for him to see that, people aren't always thinking the worst of him, because he has done good things and he's starting to do more good things now. So
I don't know that it improves his view of the New Republic at all, though.
Probably
like,
not.
Well, they let me live. He's probably pragmatic in that way. But at the same time, he's like, well, they were jerk faces and didn't help me out of this jam when they really just left me die on this ice planet. Thanks, guys.
The line of the next time we see you patrolling the rim, do you think we're going to see them back? I mean, it seems like that is kind of a foreshadowing line that we will see them at some point.
Yep, seems like it.
Yeah, so that'd be the third time at that point. So they leave him, and good luck, vaya con Dios. He says, the departure. So this is where they repair the hole. He says he can't get the hole fixed, but he's able to seal the cockpit up, and so everybody has to go into the cockpit, and that's how they're going to get home or get to the planet. And he, like a typical dad, he's like, everybody use the bathroom before we go. It's going to be a long trip. I don't want anybody telling me you got to pull over. So he tells me to use the bathroom. And I'm not sure how long the repairs take. This is one of those moments where they kind of fast forward. So we assume it's a couple hours, several hours at some point here to get all of that.
What you're really saying is a missed opportunity for another montage.
Another montage. Again, there was 2 prime opportunities for Mando montages, and neither one of them happened here.
Man, season 2 is slipping fast.
Yeah. They leave. We talked about the legs and the way they kind of just peel and slide off it's pretty spooky stuff there. And they sputter out of there. And so this is the condition that we saw in the trailer. Like they're not in, this ship
bumping into things. Yeah. I mean, it's rough shape. Not a lot of lateral control on it.
Yeah. They're, it's a contender for, biggest piece of junk in the galaxy at this point between the Falcon and the Razor Crest. Although Razor Crest probably looks more complete on the outside, but at this point, no, it does look like it's about the wheels are about to fall off here.
And it definitely sets up like what we get in space. We definitely get the setup for what we saw in the trailer, where it's limping along, the back is flapping out. So it certainly seems like that's what we're headed into and see for chapter 11.
Yeah. Jeremiah says I need a trademark Mando montage. So I'll get right on that. Let me get our lawyers on that. Where's my
quick before StarWars.com steals the idea.
Yeah, they already stole our Mando Mondays. What more can they take from us? So they're the door. He says he makes this comment right before before the episode ends. He says something about the doors being sucked off the rails. And then he says, I'm kidding. If that happened, we'd all be dead. Sweet dreams, which I thought was hilarious. Like this guy, he just scared the crap out of everybody with that line. Then he just kind of, shrugs it off and he's like, sweet dreams. Of all people, like, again, the fact that Mandalorian is telling people sweet dreams, I don't believe it's sincere. I do like the snarkiness of it all and just he's kind of laughing in the face of death because he's true. Like, hey, you know what? If this all opens up, we're going to die and none of us are probably going to even know. So why worry about it kind of thing? Right. We'll just pray for the best at this point. May the force be with us. Always.
Want to get one last little?
Oh, yes. And
you got one more in there.
One more, and he pops another one right before we end, which that little stinker, like he's just sitting there throwing these things back, slamming them down. All right.
It was a scene we missed, though, that I thought for sure you were going to zero in on, was the scene where they've got the blankets, they're going to go to bed, and the child crawls up on the Mandalorian and rests his head on
Oh
his leg.
yes, yeah.
And she's of course protecting. She's using her blanket to protect her eggs and all of that. I thought for sure you were going to really hone on this and give us a 40-minute dissection of the scene.
No, I mean it's a dad moment, and I really love that moment, honestly. And I'm glad you brought it up. I thought
it was really, really good. It was really well done. I liked it a lot too.
I mean, because it shows the relationship between the child, and it reaffirms where they are right now. I mean, he's always looking out for him in this episode. He's constantly trying to keep an eye. I mean, he's doing his best he can, right? He's keeping an eye on him while he's doing everything else and killing people. We get all that. When he goes down there to check on the baby, child, that's the first thing he looks for. He's like, crap, he's not here. So it's on his mind. He is in dad mode, and it's nice to see that it's being reciprocated by the child, because the child knows that this is the one place I feel safe at, right? I feel the safest next to him, under his arm, because he's taking care of me in all this stuff that we've seen so far. So yeah, it's a good point.
We see a couple times in this episode where the child runs to him with almost like a baby type of sound, like being scared and wanting to be held. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're on the money. I mean, we're definitely seeing this relationship continue to blossom, and they are connected at the hip. It's going to be very interesting to see how they part ways.
Yes. Or will they? They won't. Okay, so here, let's...
how long you're going to cry for if they do.
A long time. Tears of sorrow. Don't cry, you'll rust out. That was one of the lines from the movie, or the episode too. So tell me, give me your... before we get out of here, give me your final thoughts, any key takeaways from this episode.
Very different episode. Well, very different Star Wars in general. And this reminded me a bit of some of the Clone Wars episodes we got from Filoni, where they were just we got a monster movie, or we got kind of a horror type of movie, right? It was just a very different flavor. And it does harken back to The Prisoner a bit with some of the scenes, the flashing and, this kind of horror type of vibe, which I thought was okay. And I know some people may not have liked the kind of the ickiness of this, but I enjoyed that it was something different. It did kind of feel a little out of place, but overall I enjoyed the episode, and there were some really key moments in there I thought that were a lot of fun, and again, kind of touching in some ways as well. But overall, it kind of felt a little disconnected. We had a lot of convenience at the beginning of the episode, which is getting really, really difficult to continue making excuses for, right? With Dr. Mandible, oh, we just happen to have this guy who knows Mandalorians. Oh, we just happen to have this person who needs to go to the planet where the Mandalorians are at, and all of the. It was just a lot of coincidence or a lot of convenience into the show, and it's wearing a little thin with me, because we've had a lot of it. I mean, Rise of Skywalker still had a lot more, so we're not quite there cumulatively yet. We're working
right.
our way there, pretty close.
Yeah.
But convenience is great when you're kind of stuck and you don't have another way around it. But right now, we seem to be leveraging it and using it when there's other ways we could do this that were probably just as clean and clear and as effective. And I really do feel like that's at the expense of a little bit of humor. And that's a little bit disappointing. I like that we get some humor and we have a little lightheartedness. I think there's plenty of it to go around. But the way that they've done it in a couple of times throughout the season plus 2 chapters that we've had, which just really kind of take you out of that moment and disconnect you just a touch to where you're like, and it's a little bit not cringeworthy yet, but you're kind of bordering on that. So, like the episode in general, I'm getting a little burnt out on the convenience stuff of we just know everything, and if we can reduce some of that and have more natural progression, I think I'll be much happier, and I think we'll get a lot of that, and we'll still have convenience. I won't be able to get off my soapbox on that one entirely, but overall, very different episode, which I enjoyed, even with the ick factor. And I'm still mixed if I like seeing Filoni back on screen. He's a very awkward actor.
He is. He definitely is. So I don't know if he's what he's going for here, but it's fine. I don't mind him doing it. If he's playing the character as a jerk face who's very kind of cold and not very sociable, then I think he's doing a really great job. So keep it up, Filoni. I guess so. My overall thoughts. One, I did enjoy the episode. Wasn't the strongest episode by any means. It wasn't. Right. There's definitely a lot of episodes that are stronger. I was going to say in season 2, but we've only had one. Definitely not as strong as the episode in the first episode in season 2. There are a number of episodes in season 1 that I felt were stronger overall. It was different. I enjoyed that. It gave us a different aspect of Star Wars that we hadn't really seen. We've seen little bits and pieces of it, not to this extent though. At least not on film. When you get into animation, Rebels, Clone Wars, plenty of other episodes that are in par or in line with this. So it wasn't different from that perspective. But like I said, I think, it's my final verdict on this episode is to be determined. And I say that because I think, again, there's probably things in here that Filoni and Dave Favreau have laid out that we will see manifest a little bit later. Whether, again, the payoffs are really big, small, insignificant, I don't know. But rarely ever is there filler with this type of stuff. And you got to think with 8 episodes in a season, they've got to know that, right? I don't think they want or think that anything they're doing is filler. There's got to be a reason for it. If we were talking 24 episodes in a season with 1 hour episodes every month, that's when you get into the series that have Monster of the Week, filler episodes, guest writers because so-and-so wanted to take off for a month and they needed somebody to fill in there. You get into all these reasons as to why there's filler episodes, which are all valid reasons, I guess, if you think about it. But I just don't think we're here. I don't think we're here. This is not the kind of show that would lend itself to filler type episodes. So from that, the things that I would extrapolate, and I would say, disagree or agree with me or not, here's my final takes on what I think we'll probably see from all of this. So one, the jetpack. The use of the jetpack early on, I think they were setting that up for something later down the road. Whether it's in the last episode or whatever, the fact that he was able to remotely control the jetpack, I think is going to play out later down the road. Maybe somebody else uses it that does not fly it. He remotes them in. Maybe it saves somebody. I don't know. But it just seems like, given that the most obvious thing for him to do as a Mandalorian would just be kill that guy in cold blood, him to use a jetpack, again, speaks to the convenience of all, so they can explain that a little bit later. So, again, minor thing. Maybe happens, maybe it doesn't. Mando didn't use the hyperspace, didn't go into hyperspace, so I've kind of already talked about this one, but I think this helps to explain why somebody like Boba Fett, or anybody else, really, right? Put Boba Fett to the side. Anybody else could be following him and trailing him off Tatooine at this point because they never went into hyperspace. So there could be something from that, whether Boba Fett's in a different ship, in Slave One, who knows? The child, I feel, is up to something. I don't think he's eating the eggs. I think he's doing something with them. I don't know what that is. And again, the counter argument, apart from apart from it not being the funny piece of it all and him eating the eggs, I think it gets a little messy in how do you explain what he was doing when you've got a child who can't talk, right? So they've got to be able to reconcile that if that truly is in the next episode. In my head, what if, and I think about some of the stuff that we saw from the trailer where we see the Razor Crest flying in, it's in flames, right? My guess is that's this new planet Trask, and they're burning up on entry and they crash. And what if it is the only people that survive are the Mando and the child, and the frog lady dies, and all the eggs are broken or burning or whatever, and those are all dead? Well, then my head tells me that story is he coughs one up, and Mando's like, "What are you doing with this?" And he coughs all of them up. And then at that point, now he feels obligated that he's got to go deliver the rest of these eggs to the father so that they can be fertilized, right? And that continues and kind of closes the story there. So that would be one way that I think they could explain all this without having to explicitly explain that, oh, he ate him and he was protecting him, and Mando will probably never figure out why he did that, how he did that. Maybe he just chalks it up to the Force or the sorcerer ways. I don't know. So that's one theory I have on that, but I don't think he's eating them. Again, I could be wrong. Last two things. We know the ship is on its last leg. The whole integrity is gone. It's down to 1.5 engines. And, this is, I think this is the end of the Razor Crest. Like I think when it lands on Trask that it's out of commission for a while, not permanently, but I think it's going to be out for a number of episodes. And that's really going to landlock the Mandalorian in a lot of ways. Unless he finds a way to get off the planet, I think we may end up spending a lot of time on Trask or in and around Trask because of the condition of the Razor Crest. Otherwise, we're going to get a Mando montage and they're going to get it all fixed up again like the A-Team, and they'll take off and we won't have to worry about that.
That would be interesting to actually spend time in one place for more than an episode and a half or 2 episodes.
Yeah. Consistently too, right? Like his Tatooine, we've been there a few times, but we keep going and coming back, right? But actually being there and having a world like that for a few episodes would be interesting to do. And then lastly, the thing about the Mandalorian, I think people are starting to see him differently now. He's starting to lay the seeds of his legend and who he is as this prominent legendary character, not to the likes of like Luke Skywalker, but he is making a name for himself. He's already made a name for himself with the Bounty Hunters Guild. He's made a name for himself with other Mandalorians. They know who he is. They know what he's done. The Covenant left. We can only assume they're talking about his praises and what he's done, right, and what's happening there. Do
you think he has a positive outlook with them, considering he made them uproot and probably got them killed in some respect?
Yeah, I mean, I think they consciously made a decision. I don't believe like the Mandalorians are looking at him going, "You did this to us, you jerk. You should not have done this. We had a good thing going." I think they accepted what had happened at that point. I mean, he didn't have to go do the flyby and give him a salute, right? I mean, that's
Right.
I think they were okay with it. I think it's just the Mandalorian way. Like it's they're gonna
That's
side with him and they're gonna stand by him, even though they may not like the decision. For all they know, they've been on the run. I mean, I don't know. But I think the point of that is I think he's making a name for himself out there. Now, right or wrong, good or bad, I don't know. But people are starting to know who he is.
Right.
And now you've got the New Republic, which again is a little bit weaker, but they know he's on their radar. They know that the good deed that he did, and at least turning in those 3 people and saving Lieutenant Dan or Davin. Lieutenant Dan's from Forrest Gump, totally different movie. But yeah, Lieutenant Davin, they see that. So again, I just think that he's starting to have a reputation. He's starting to build that character. And then for him, I think this is all going to start playing up. All of this stuff that he's doing now is going to start creeping up in positive ways and good ways. And I think my hope is that it reinforces him and it changes him and allows him to develop as a character from a just cold-hearted bounty hunter that we've seen a million times in Legends and in every other episode or whatever, and somebody that's a little bit more has a lot more dimensions to him, and we get to see that grow over time and over the course of however many seasons this series shall go. So
right. And Jeremiah just had a really interesting comment. The Mandalorians were probably bored of hiding underground. They were ready to get out of there, and that's actually might not be all that far off, because we kind of know Mandalorians sometimes are spoiling for a fight. And it might have just been the opportunity that they were looking for. So I kind of agree with that a little bit. I think the other thing that I thought was interesting, Albert, was the 2 X-Wings pilot, the New Republic guys, never acknowledged that he was a Mandalorian at all. And I thought that very curious and a bit peculiar why they would. Everybody else seems to know he's a Mandalorian, or at least know there's something special about him. And these 2 guys just looked like he was any other Adam in the lineup. I just thought that was very interesting that there was absolutely no reference that they understood who he was or even cared. I just thought that was really interesting. I don't know what to make of it either.
Yeah. Do you think they're sensitive to labeling somebody as a Mandalorian because they know that, they're, no. Okay.
No.
I'll leave it. Well, I was trying to think
but nobody really knows the Mandalorians all that well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they haven't seen them in a while. They know they were purged. So they're almost, they've become, it's really weird because it hasn't been that long. So how their stories of legend is a bit curious, I guess. Jedi kind of became a thing of legend after, 20 years of being missing too. But
yeah.
It was just curious. I don't know that they have some sort of respect or anything like that for it, because clearly they don't.
No.
They don't care. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't see it more as respect. I was thinking more along the lines of, they don't believe any Mandalorians are really around at this point. And so there may be people that are just posers running around with the armor. They've seen people like this. I mean, we saw him when he first started. He didn't even have a full suit on, right? He had a kind of a piecemeal suit of mismatched armor on. And so maybe they're just looking at him thinking, you're not a Mandalorian as we know it, if whatever little we know. So there's no reason to acknowledge him as that. Again, he could just be anybody that's running around with that. But I don't know. It's a good point. I mean, I don't know if that was consciously a decision that was made to not refer to him as a Mandalorian, but maybe that has something to do with it later on.
I think it's just curious. I'm wondering if the New Republic just does not care.
Yeah.
Like, we don't really care who you are.
Right.
These are the rules. Follow them, please.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. And we'll be back next week on the 15th for chapter 11. Don't have a lot of information on that here just yet, but any final thoughts before we get out of here?
A couple things. Thanks to everyone for showing up in the live chat. Jeremiah, Dale, Steph, Twan, Dante, TJ, Kayla. There were a whole slew of people. I'm sorry I'm missing people, but thank you for showing up and for being so active and participating. We invite everybody to come out to the live stream. Trying to do this consistently on Sunday nights at 10 East, 9 Central. What is that? 7 West Coast. So also a lot of great discussion lately on Discord. So encourage everyone to come out to Discord, earglermedia.com/Discord. We'll get you there and pop in and say hello. We're there pretty regularly, and a lot of other great people there to talk to and welcome you, and kind of get exposed to other shows on the network if any of them strike your fancy.
Yes. And we definitely do a live kind of discussion, at least in Discord. again, if we do a watch party, I don't know, maybe we'll do something official in that respect. But we're definitely talking about the episode as soon as it happens on Friday mornings, like at 2 a.m. An hour after it's aired. That discussion goes on for at least an hour or so. And there's about probably a good 6 or 7 people that have been consistently there. But if you're up at that hour or don't sleep like me, you're more than welcome to join us and join in the discussion as well. It's a lot of fun to talk about. So
yep, we have a spoiler channel, and then we have another one that's a bit more spoiler free until the episode kind of gets out into the open a bit. So something for everyone.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get out of here. We'll see you guys next week for Chapter 11.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.